Hello, M&A Advisor community, and welcome to the M&A Advisor podcast. I'm Roger Aguinaldo, the founder and CEO of the M&A Advisor. Tune in as I engage with top experts in the M&A, distressed investing, restructuring, and finance industry. And don't miss a beat. This is going to be another thought-provoking episode. As fall 2024 is now in full swing, the M&A Advisor gears up yet again for a much-awaited our signature event of the year, the 2024 Future of Dealmaking Summit, happening on November 19th and 20th at the prestigious New York Athletic Club. This premier gathering promises to showcase transformative ideas, innovative excellence, and collaborative strategies that define the dynamic landscape of the global dealmaking and M&A communities. Don't miss your chance to be part of an event that will shape the future of deal making. We just had our Leadership in Deal Making Summit in early fall, and we had our next guest, Jon Henes, the founder and CEO of C Street Advisory Group, as one of our featured speakers. As we explore innovation, strategies, and excellence in the M&A field, it's crucial to spotlight the voices that shape the future of deal making. And in this context, we are proud to have Jon Henes from C Street. Welcome, Jon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, great, terrific. Well, you're the founder and CEO of C Street Advisory Group, a market-defining strategic firm, strategic communications firm, committed to helping its clients in navigating complex special situations, including restructurings, liability management transactions, workouts, and Chapter 11 cases. Jon spent 20 years as a senior partner in the restructuring group at Kirkland & Ellis. With a robust career in M&A, he also ventured into the world of politics, serving as the National Finance Chair for Vice President Kamala Harris's 2020 presidential campaign, and as finance chair for Ray McGuire's 2021 New York City mayoral campaign. His diverse experience showcases a dynamic blend of finance and leadership. Jon earned his JD from the Benjamin N. Cardozo School of Law, where he served as the managing editor of the Law Review, recently taught as an adjunct professor. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming our distinguished guest and thought leader, Jon Henes. So, Jon, just want to get sort of right into it. Just really at the beginning of your career, a lot of our listeners to this just want to know how you got to where you are. So we're going to just start with your career journeys, where you are right now. I mean, when you started, you went to law school. Did you think, at that point, I'm going to be a lawyer initially, and then get into sort of strategic communications and restructuring for restructuring transactions? Or, when you started at the Benjamin Cardozo School, what was your thought then? Be a partner at a law firm for forever?
No, I don't think I gave it that much thought at all. I graduated from college, spent a couple of years kind of floating around, figuring things out. I coached basketball and lacrosse at my high school. I bartendered, I waitered, and then decided it was time to go do something in the professional world. So I went to law school. At law school, I didn't really.
You grew up where? Where did you grow up?
It's a small town in Westchester County called Croton-on-Hudson, New York.
Yep.
That was my hometown. My dad's still there. And so at law school, I didn't really know what to expect. I wasn't a great student, in high school or college, did not pay attention to my studies.
Where did you go to college? Where did you?
I went to Union College in Schenectady, New York.
My brother went to Union College, so I know that. It's a top school, Jon. So you are a good student. That's a good school.
I played football, so that helped me get in. Otherwise, I'm not sure I would have gotten in. But so in law school, I actually met my wife there and met her on one of the first days of law school. And she, as we were, because I guess I'll say chasing her, courting her, we'll say.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a more politically correct thing to say today.
I started to study because she was studying and she actually cared about her studies. And,
She was going for her law degree as well.
She was going for a law degree as well. And so I started to study. I would always tell her, I was like, look, I'm just not a good student. I'm really not that smart. Like things kind of work out, and she was like, you're kind of an idiot. You are smart. And all you have to do is dig in and work. And so I did. In my first year of law school, I did very well. Made law reviews with my wife. And so we were on it together. And then, through that, after my second year, I was a summer associate at Weil, Gotshal and Manges. And that was the first time I had really seen any kind of professional service firm at all. And I was surrounded by people from Harvard and Yale and Columbia and all these schools. And I'll admit, when I first stepped in, I was pretty intimidated by it all. But somebody had given me advice. Somebody at Cardozo who graduated the year before me said, that first assignment that you do, make sure it's great. And so I remember just like digging into that first assignment. I don't know if it was great or not, but it was definitely good enough. And then I, just got to know everybody and talked to everybody, and tried to figure out what I wanted to do, as a lawyer. And what happened was I was looking at, I thought I wanted to be an M&A lawyer, because I had taken these classes in law school and heard about, T. Boone Pickens and all of these people and these cases, and they seemed really interesting. And so I was on the subway going to work, reading the paper, and saw that Weil Gotshal was representing Westinghouse in the CBS Westinghouse merger.
Right.
So I went to the head of the summer associates and said, I'd love to work on this. She put me in touch with the partner, and I walked into the partner's office and was eager, what am I going to do? Let's go. This sounds so exciting. And he was like, all right, so the first thing we're going to do is kind of wait. And I said, what does that mean? And he said, well, the business people are talking about the deal. They'll let us know what it is, and then we'll paper it. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, that doesn't sound like fun. And then later on in the summer, I was going through the restructuring group, and the partner in charge of our group, really the person who created modern day Chapter 11, was Harvey Miller. And I went to a meeting with Harvey, and he walked into the room and just basically started saying, this is how it's going to be, and here's what we need to do. And everybody kind of gravitated around him. And I was like, get that. If I want to practice law, that's what I want to do.
So while you worked under Harvey Miller. Wow.
I did. He was an amazing
He is one of our Lifetime Achievement Award recipients, by the way, and inducted into the Hall of Fame. So that's
well deserved from him. He was an amazing lawyer, and an amazing person. I learned so much from Harvey. And he, and so he built the restructuring group at Weil.
Yeah.
I was part of that group, until I left to go try to start a company before I went to Kirkland. It was during the .com boom, and I had some ideas about, I saw everybody else kind of running around doing all this exciting stuff. And in my spare time, when I wasn't working, I was helping friends of mine that were starting businesses, helping them with their business plans, helping them, introduce them to angel investors or to lawyers or accounting firms. And my wife one day said, you're spending so much time on your non-work stuff. Do you think it could be a business? And so I decided I was going to leave Weil. This is after about 3.5 years, and start this business. And I went and spoke to a bunch of partners at Weil and said, I'm going to do this. And they invested.
So you're talking about, you're getting into C Street?
No, this is this is 20 years before, 20, more than 20 years before C Street.
I want to circle back to Harvey Miller because, I want to ask you a question on mentorship, but you continue your story on starting your first business.
Yeah, this was a company called actually Blaze Ventures. And so we were going to be helping startups get started. So helping them with the introductions to the professionals that they needed, with introductions to the investors that would provide them with their money, help them with technology. And we actually created a product that, if in today's parlance, would be Google Docs. It didn't quite work that well for what we did, but we tried. We did a whole bunch of
You
pilot
needed,
programs.
you needed a search engine to kind of boost you through.
We needed a lot. But anyway, so, and then when that company didn't work, I did that for about 18 months. My wife got pregnant with our first child. I needed to go make some money. And so I decided to go back to the law for a year, and I went to Kirkland, and then 20 years later I left.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me circle back to Harvey Miller, because not many people, well, look, Harvey Miller, I guess at the time was a superstar. But then he becomes a legend even after a few decades later. Right. So when did you know that, hey, I do want to work with people like Harvey and that team and restructuring? When did you know that, and why is it important to find people? Perhaps Harvey was a mentor. Maybe I could say that. I don't know how closely you worked with them, or how closely did you work with them, and how important is it, especially early or mid in your career, to continually find people to help mentor you or guide you, in your career?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, working backwards from that question, I don't think you ever stop learning, and I don't think you ever stop finding both mentors and team members and others, whether they are senior or junior, more experienced or less experienced, that can add something new to the way you're thinking about things. But going back to Harvey, like I had mentioned, when I was a summer associate, I saw Harvey walk into a room. And so I said, that's kind of what I want to do. And so
Joe, okay, but let's go back though. What was it that said, okay, I want to do this? What, obviously it sounds like you describe it. It's something about Harvey that said, that's what I want to aspire to. Right.
I think it's two things. I think there's no question that Harvey was larger than life. Harvey, he dressed impeccably. When he walked into a room, with the most confidence. He was strong. He would never back down to anyone. He was smart. He worked harder than anybody else. So there was definitely a Harvey component to people. You would just want to be around somebody like that. I knew even as a summer associate that this is like someone special, someone different from the everyday, person. And then the restructuring practice for me was, it's forever changing, right? Every day is new. It's about, you're working with a company that is going through some sort of financial issue. And it has a lot of stakeholders, right? From employees to creditors to other investors to, vendors, suppliers, customers. And so all of those parties are looking at the company and trying to figure out what's going to happen and how do we deal with that. And so it's kind of almost like a puzzle that you've got to put together. And a lot of it, there's the law underpinnings, but a lot of it is just negotiating and communicating and working with people and collaborating. And that's something that I always loved to do. I was not somebody who, liked to sit in an office and just read a book and write something. I wanted to be talking to people and working through things. And so when I saw Harvey the first time walk into that room and everybody kind of come around him, and he's talking about finance and law and, commercial things and employees and like psychological things, right? The trauma that, the management team's going to feel that because they have to go through this process. I was like, wow, this is dynamic. This is substantive. This is substantial. And it's just something that, drew me in.
And much more, as opposed to M&A, much more in restructuring, right? It's very emotional. People are attached to things. So there's a lot of communication and talk and a discussion about what's going to happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah. What I would say, so M&A is, right. I mean, it's what it sounds like, it's one company is going to buy or merge with another company. So it's just one transaction. Litigation, right, is there's some issue that you need to litigate to get to a result, and you're either the one bringing it or you're the one defending against it. Restructuring is more like life. There's transactions, there's litigation, there's all of the different pieces, and it's pulling it all together. So there's so much that goes into it. And you need to bring those experts in from other groups. But I really, that just something about it drew me in, and it was my personality, how I think about the world, how I work. I always like to bring people together. I like to find ways if people are having a fight, how do you resolve that? But if you have to be tough, you'll be tough. When you have to be, kind, you'll be kind. And I guess you're always going to be kind. But so it just really drew me in. And at Weil at the time, Weil was they were the king and queens of restructuring and bankruptcies. So if you wanted to do that practice, that was the place to do it on the company side of the practice area. And so that it was just this incredible group of partners and associates and people that I got to work with and learn from every day.
Calling all M&A restructuring and corporate finance professionals. I'm Roger Aguinaldo, the creator and CEO of the M&A Advisor, and I have some great news for you. You are warmly invited to the exclusive Deal Forum at the 2024 Future of Dealmaking Summit on November 20th, 2024 at the prestigious New York Athletic Club in the heart of New York City. Light up your M&A career and ignite your deal-making skills. Join us at the all-new Deal Forum of the 2024 Future of Dealmaking Summit. This assembly gathers business insiders and deal makers to discuss the top trends, opportunities, and key issues facing the mergers and acquisitions market. The faculty, comprised of industry experts, participate in fireside chat sessions where they engage in insightful discussions moderated by prominent media personalities and thought leaders, keynote conversations, and M&A TV interviews. Finally, network, exchange ideas, and gain valuable insights in a face-to-face conversation with a thought leader of your choice in one-on-one meetings. To know more about the Deal Forum at the Future of Dealmaking Summit or to register, visit our website at www.maadvisor.com. That's maadvisor.com. Email us at events@maadvisor.com or call +1 212 951 1550. That's 212 951 1550. Don't miss out. Register now. The future of deal making awaits. Yeah, and in restructuring, more than most, it seems like lawyers have sort of critical central role, as opposed to M&A, where the M&A is, two business guys or gals, companies getting together, and then, okay, the lawyers will paper it, right? Like you said. Whereas in restructuring, I think you would, because there's litigation, because there's, hey, what's going to trip this covenant if this happens? The lawyers are almost central or even key in a lot of those discussions.
Yeah, I guess I would say it a little bit differently.
Okay.
To be fair to the M&A lawyers out there, I think that as the practice has evolved, right? And I also think it's personality driven. So you could have an M&A lawyer from a firm that is also a strategist, is also thinking big picture. And so when they get involved in an M&A transaction, they're thinking of all aspects of it. And they, together with the investment bankers, are leading that and working together. Sometimes you'll find a lawyer that's not. They're more of just like, they're going to paper the deal. Sometimes you find an investment banker that brings the deal, but then it goes away. But I think the best lawyers and the best bankers, they don't just stick to their lane. They stick to, how do we go get the deal done? And I think in restructuring that happens too. But I'm a huge believer in, if you're going to go get something done well, it needs to be a team effort, because everybody's bringing different skills and disciplines to the table. So, in a restructuring, for instance, the lawyers the investment bankers, the financial advisors, the communication specialists are all coming together and need to collaborate, coordinate, be a cohesive group to provide the best advice for their clients. And it's another part of the practice that I love.
Yeah, I find that in transactions, the best M&A lawyers are the ones that have worked on bankruptcies and turnarounds and restructurings, right? Because they know, hey, if we don't address this situation, we don't put it in the documents, maybe on the other side, we might be seeing this 18 to 24 months from now, right? And how would we deal with it then?
Yep. But it's interesting. When I first got to Kirkland, I was working on a restructuring, and Kirkland was a very different place at that time, right? It was, the restructuring group was about 20, 24 people, not 200 people. And we were just running, we were hustling to bring in what we could bring in. And we had a situation, and we brought in one of the corporate lawyers, and we were in the middle of it. And the corporate lawyer called me up and said, what's market here? And I remember just being like, what do you mean? Like, there is no market in restructurings, right? Like it's going to be whatever the deal is that we have to get done. And I remember the lawyer just being like, wait, what do you mean? Like, there has to be a market. And I was like, how can there be a market? Like, every case is different. But yeah, that's what makes it interesting. That's what makes it fun.
Yeah. And again, I think when the more experienced lawyers who have worked on, or the M&A lawyers that have worked on turnarounds and bankruptcy, and maybe that sometimes not through their own devices, right? They just, it's our client. We saw the whole business cycle, from startup to, M&A to bankruptcy, right? So sometimes you kind of see that. And I find those that have seen the actually entire, business cycle, from birth to death are some of the ones that you want to follow their advice. You find that be the case as well?
Yeah. I think, in the restructuring world, you just gain such insights into so many different aspects of the business, right? So Harvey used to say, the restructuring lawyers are the last of the generalists. You need to kind of know a little bit about everything, and then a lot about restructuring or bankruptcy law. So that means that you're getting involved in every out. So you're going to see, they're going to do a big riff, or they have a pension issue, or, they've had some, big class action litigation that's going on, or, some employee issues. So you see it all. And so you really see how a business operates, as opposed to, in M&A, you may be looking at some of those things, but it's really about the deal and the transaction, where restructuring is really about the company and the people.
Yep. Yeah. Well, that's great advice from Harvey. Obviously, being with him too, you only there for some associate. You worked after that, right? At over, hey, we like this guy. Let's have him back. And then you did your entrepreneurial stint. For how long did that go?
That was 18 months.
18 months. Your wife gets pregnant. What's your wife's name?
My wife's name is Pam. Yeah. So she got pregnant with our first. And
then did she practice law?
She did. She practiced law. She started off at Sherman and Sterling as a 40 Act lawyer, but she always wanted to be a trust and estates lawyer. And then she went to Blanket, where she went next. And then she ended up at Simpson Thatcher she went to Morgan Lewis, and did trust and estates for maybe a year, and then went to Simpson Thatcher and was there for 7-8 years, I want to say.
She's still practicing?
No, she's not.
Raising the family? How many?
Family.
Okay. So then you had to make more money because you have kids who are coming along. What's that?
Nothing. I was regular. They're not cheap. Kids are not cheap.
Yeah, no. I always, which is weird, but I always see that one of these financial advisor ads that say, see if you could afford. We'll help you see if you could afford that third kid. It's like we reduced the having children into an economic discussion, which is
Yeah,
It turns out to be, but I wouldn't want to plan it that way.
definitely. You never regret having a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and so then you find yourself at another great law firm, K&E, right?
Yep.
Or
Yep. Yeah. So I made the decision. So when I started the company, which was called Blaze Ventures, um, I closed my first round of financing 3 days after the NASDAQ crashed. And so then we tried to continue to, build, but it was a very different time after the NASDAQ crashed than it was before the NASDAQ crashed. And, we made a good go of it. But then we tried to sell the software that we had built.
So Blaze Ventures was it an operating company, or was it like a VC angel?
Operating company. So it was to consult with startups, and we had this technology that we were trying. So we did a beta program with Kirkland and with Columbia Business School, and this was that Google Docs type thing to get everybody sharing on the same document. And then I tried to sell it to one of the printing companies in the old days, when people went to the printer,
like Merrill or one of those.
or Allen, those types of things.
Yeah.
And we were getting a little bit close to a deal.
Anyway, they always had the best, season tickets, right? They always had that.
They would give a lot of stuff out to get them. Yeah. So it didn't work. And when I knew it wasn't working, I needed to go find something, like I said. And it was really trying to figure out just a resting place to get my feet under me, start making a salary, and then figure out what I wanted to do next, because I had that entrepreneurial itch. And so I interviewed at a whole bunch of different firms. And I had Jamie Spray-Reagan, who ran Kirkland's restructuring group. I remember him sitting with me and being like, I was getting, it was at the time, there was a recession. So everybody wanted mid to senior level restructuring attorneys. And
by the way, another leadership and or actually lifetime recipient and in our Hall of Fame.
yes,
James Sprayer.
exactly. I got to work with the legend. So it was,
It's like you were who's who of
exactly
people you're working with. How do you you gotta give some advice on how people can find people like that and work around them. That's tough.
sometimes, but you learn so much from people. But so he, I was very fortunate, because even though I just, started a business, and 18 months later, I had to be like, okay, it's not going to work, which, I learned a lot from, but it's not easy to give up on something that you really wanted to do. And so I started talking to these different law firms, and they were all giving signing bonuses, because they really needed people. And, I remember Jamie was willing to give me a signing bonus, but it was not as much as the others. And, and at the time, when you're in that,
he's a good negotiator. That's
when you're at that level, you're young and everything else, every dollar seems to matter, right? It can be very easy to think short-term instead of long-term. And I remember I talking to my wife, again, great advice from my wife. And she was like, look, Jamie Spray-Reagan, who we didn't know at all at the time, he is at least telling you that Kirkland is this entrepreneurial law firm. It's growing. He's going to give you, a ton of leeway, and autonomy and empowerment at the same time while you're working with him and gaining all that expertise. And the other firms are just kind of firms. And so, yeah, you could go make a little bit more money on the signing bonus, but maybe this is a better long-term play. And I was like, well, I don't know if I'm really thinking about it long-term, but you're right. And so I called Jamie and said, yeah, I'm in. It's great.
So it's there. I mean, he knew you were an entrepreneur, right? And your wife knows you're an entrepreneur, so you're entrepreneurial.
Yeah, and truthfully, Jamie is too. Jamie hustled and still does more than any person than you could think of. I mean, there's a couple people that are in the market now, or that are in the industry now, that are that the next generation that are hustling. But Jamie was a hustler. He had a vision for building out a restructuring group, and he jumped into Kirkland, and Kirkland went from, it's probably, I don't know how many, 5 people when he started, and, to, like I mentioned before, 200 and whatever, 20 people now.
What number were you? Were you like,
I was probably like number 24 in the,
so pretty early. Yeah.
pretty early. When I got to Kirkland, there were 4 restructuring lawyers in New York, and I think 20-ish, 16, 20 in Chicago. And then we built it out from there.
And you came on as an associate?
I came in as a 6th-year associate. And then Kirkland had, at the time, I think still probably does, a 2-tier partnership system. So after 6 years, you're up for what they used to call non-share partner. And then 3 to 4 years after that, share partner. And so I was an associate for a year, and then I made non-share partner, and then eventually equity partner. When my first day, my first day at Kirkland was September 4th, 2001. So 9/11 happened a week later. So that was quite a way to jump.
Where were their offices? Was it downtown or midtown?
No, midtown. We were with Citicorp Center, so 53rd and Lex, which is where they still are. Although they don't call it Citicorp Center anymore, now it's 601 Lex, and Kirkland, I think, has more office space there than anybody else. But yeah, so that I got like thrown right into it. And the New York office at Kirkland was small. It was 120 people, which in today it's 700-800 people, I think. So, I got in there, and we were kind of a ragtag bunch, running around, taking what we could. Kirkland obviously has an amazing private equity practice. So you'd get companies that fell into financial trouble, portfolio companies that would need help. So you'd get brought into those. And as time went on, it became just like a smooth running machine where, we started building up a real brand. If Jamie already had a brand, but it was Jamie. Like I remember used to say this all the time. If you would say, what are the best, restructuring firms, they would be like Weil, Gotshal, Aiken Gump, and Jamie, and it was like, and Jamie never lost that legendary status, but Kirkland, the Kirkland brand became the Kirkland brand.
Right.
And so, I spent, 20 years just working on cases, helping to build the group, recruiting people over, working with other practice areas, because as I mentioned also before, restructurings, you're bringing so many different disciplines to the table. And, it was that 1 year, and figure out what I want to do, turned into 20. But it was an amazing 20 years.
Any interesting, restructurings that are notable?
Yeah. I mean, for me, the most notable restructuring was Solutia, which was a big chemical company. And the reason for that is, I was young. Rick Sierri, who started his career at Jones Day and then went to Gibson Dunn and then came to Kirkland in 2003, maybe, or 5. I can't remember which year, but early 2000s to mid 2000s, he came over and he brought Solutia. And it was a case that kind of had everything, because big chemical companies, so it had major litigations going on. It had environmental issues. It had lots of different tranches of debt. So there was just a ton of stuff. And all the different creditor groups were represented by other legend, Danny Golden and Aiken Gump and, people like that and I was this young kid, and Rick let me run with this case. And so, I was dealing with all of these.
You were just a 6-year associate, or were you?
I was probably a 2nd year non-share partner, something like that. And so I was dealing with all of these people that were significantly senior to me.
Yeah.
And then the judge, Judge Beatty, she was a legend in her own right. She was, she's unique. She is idiosyncratic. There were a lot of people who did not like being in front of her because she did not make it easy for people. But she and I built this incredible relationship from her on the bench and me at the podium.
Yeah.
And it was really an incredible experience for me. to be working with her. In fact, I remember after Solution ended, she retired, and go back to Harvey Miller. She retired, and she had a retirement dinner, and so they invited me to it. And I was the youngest person, at the dinner by probably 20 years. And it was this whole, and I think people thought I was the waiter. I don't even think, like, a lot of these people knew who I was.
What district was she in? Where? What?
Southern District of New York. Yeah.
Okay, so you're traveling down to Delaware. You were right here in
Lower Manhattan.
Lower Manhattan. Okay.
But so she has this dinner, and we're sitting there around this big table, and maybe there's, call it 20 people around it, and I'm at the end. And Harvey says to Judge Beatty, he says, so Judge, you had this, long career as being a lawyer. You've been a judge for 20 years, and you're retiring. You've seen it all. I want to know what was your favorite case and why? And she looks at him, and then she looks down the table at me. She goes, well, that's easy. It was Solution because of Mr. Henes. And I just remember, and everybody just turned to look at me, and I was like, wow, that's quite a thing for somebody to say. But she and I, she would call me, right? Which obviously judges, you should be making those phone calls, but she did what she did. But when she called me, it was never, like, hey, we're going to talk about some issue. It was career advice. So she would be like, Mr. Henes, I'd pick up the phone, Jon Henes, and I'd hear, Mr. Henes, it's Judge Beatty. And I'd be like, oh, hi, Judge Beatty. And she'd be like, so at the hearing today, the creditors, lawyers were going at it, and you jumped into the middle of it. And you know what? You don't have to jump into the middle of it. You need to be a half an inch taller than those guys. Okay. Like, I know that they're just fighting for what they want, right? But you're the one telling me the truth. So you stay a half an inch, taller, don't get in the next. And she would give me that type of advice from time to time, which really, obviously, as I'm talking about it now, it sticks with me till today. So she was very special to me. But that case meant so much to me for so many reasons, because by being so young and doing it, and it became successful, that put me up into a different place in the restructuring world. And I got to build these relationships with lawyers from other firms that I was going to see in all these other.
So who was Katie? Who were you representing in that case?
Solution, the company.
You were representing the company directly, and the creditors were just over there, right? He said, just let them talk to themselves.
Well, so, you had a creditors committee, you had secured lenders, you had unsecured bondholders, you had plaintiffs' lawyers. There were like a million different, constituents that wanted something.
Right. And so she was giving you, sounds really good advice. Hey, let them fight over it. You don't have to get in the middle of that, right?
She would say, like, there's certain things you're going to fight and certain things you don't. And, you don't have to fight on everything. And, but she was controversial, definitely controversial. But she and I had we found a huge amount of mutual respect for each other. And I learned a lot from her, and, she, it was very,
Harvey, was Jamie at that dinner as well, or just
no, Jamie? I don't think
turned around and said, hey, he used to work with us.
Yeah, exactly. No, there were people there, like legends of the restructuring community that I didn't know actually existed, like Josh Angel, and who I thought was like a fake person, but he was there, and I was like, oh, wow, Josh Angel's here. But so that was probably the case that meant the most to me from a professional growth standpoint. Like all the cases, every case in the restructuring world, it's different, it's unique. You're dealing with new people. Like, I made so many of my clients became friends. So many of my, I'll call it lawyer adversaries or friends. I thought it was a great. I'm still in that industry, but it was a great industry to be in and grow up in.
One lawyer told me that, M&A, you're really in the people business, not necessarily in the transaction business, people business. But as you describe restructuring, you really have to have a high level of EQ, right? In restructuring.
Yeah. Look, I think when you're representing a company, I think that's right, because you're, like I just said, if you take Solution, you've got plaintiff's attorneys. You've got the attorneys for the unsecured bonds. You have attorneys for the secured bonds. You have attorneys for the secured loans. And they all have their own parochial interest in what's going on. And in order to get it done and get the company out of Chapter 11, you need to find a deal that you can either get everybody to agree on, or there's some that you can kind of cram that deal down on. But that, especially in a complex deal, that takes time and effort. And it takes cajoling. It takes, I'll tell one story, which without naming names, but we got to the end of the case and we had a mediation, and we got to a deal on the mediation, and it was like late night that we got to the deal. And then, so we all went to court the next morning to go present it to the judge. And this very, very senior lawyer who represented one of the groups, as I was about to walk into court, said to me, "Hey, I actually don't know if we have a deal." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like, "Well, I had 4 of my 5 guys on board last night, but I don't think I can get the 5th. And to get the 5th, you're going to have to give this." And I turned to him, I said, "You know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to walk out. I'm going to tell the judge we have a deal because you told me last night we did, and I told the judge we did. If you want to go and tell Judge Beatty that you couldn't get the 5th person on board, good luck to you." And so I just went up to the podium and said it. And when he walked up to the podium, he said, "Your Honor, we have a deal." So like you just like, there's a feel, and
maybe they wanted something. That's a little tactic, right? That when you,
well, they definitely wanted something. We weren't going to give it to them.
no, that's good. So, hey, look, you have your partner over at K&E. You could have run the whole place, I guess, but you decided, hey, I'm gonna now step away from being a partner and start my own firm. So, what went through your mind?
Sure. Yeah, I don't know if I was.
Well, let's talk about C Street and what it does, and then tell us why you kind of thought you make that leap now.
But you're the interviewer, but I'm going to do it a little bit different.
Okay.
First of all, I don't think I couldn't have run the place, and they have great leadership that does an amazing job running the place. COVID hit, and right before COVID hit, I got involved in Kamala Harris's campaign, and I got involved because my son wrote an article about why his first vote ever was going to be for Kamala Harris as president, which led, and I won't go into it now, but led into a whole thing that got me very close with the vice president and with the second gentleman. And so I got very involved in the campaign. And getting involved in the campaign, I all of a sudden every day was talking to and working with a whole group of people that I had never known before. People in the finance world, people in the business world. And it was an incredibly diverse group of people because her campaign was incredibly diverse.
Now, when were you tasked the national finance chair for her campaign?
So I got involved with the campaign. I want to say, kind of jumped in to my first real event in maybe April of 2019. And then my guess is I was asked to be the finance chair sometime in the summer of 2019.
Yeah.
And in that in-between period, I basically just said yes to whatever the campaign asked. I really built this close relationship with both the VP and the second gentleman, and they meant a lot to me. I believed in her. I believed in her vision. I believed in all the people that I was working with and alongside, including Ray McGuire and others. And I was learning so much from all of them, and it was a whole new world to me.
Yep.
And so, and then
when we were talking at the Leadership and Dealmaking Summit, you said you didn't seek this out. Your son was part or found this campaign first, right? And then brought you in.
Yeah, he in 2015, 2017, probably 2017, because she became a senator in 2016. She, and a lot of people will remember this, she questioned Jeff Sessions. And my son happened to be watching it. and was blown away by the way that she questioned him and her kind of strength and her questions. And then he kept track of her. And then when she launched her campaign, he wrote this article about why his first vote ever would be for her. And that's what launched me into it. And so he and I did a lot together. We still do.
This is your oldest child? This is your
No.
And then, oh, so let's go back to the beginning of this. So this is who your wife pregnant with.
That's 100, exactly right. Yes.
There you go.
So it's due to him. All of my good decisions in life are because of my son. So COVID hit, and, we were all kind of, everybody was locked away, I was with my family. And, it went from, I was working incredibly hard, because when COVID hit, the restructuring world blew up, right? And there were a million things going on, but I was working so hard from home. So I was having, dinner every night with family and, was seeing them all day long. And, it was so different from the usual hustle and bustle when you're like running to the office. And there was actually something, even though it was such a terrible time and there were so many deaths and, and it was scary. And, at the same time, from a family perspective, it was amazing. And, so I, started to think a lot of just about life. And one of the things I was thinking about is that when we would get involved in these restructuring matters, and we'd have the lawyers and the bankers and the financial advisors on the communication side. We didn't have a communications firm that also was an expert in restructuring, right? Like, so if you think about Kirkland and Ellis, there's lots of lawyers there, and there's a group that focus on restructuring, and that is what they do. And so if you get into a company gets into financial trouble, who do you go? You don't go to the M&A lawyers, you go to the restructuring lawyers. And so I was like, I really think there's an opportunity for communications people in the restructuring space. We also were doing other things as well. But that was one of the pieces of it. And I just decided, I always had that entrepreneurial itch, right? I left Wild Gotcha to try it. I wasn't getting any younger. I was sitting in COVID and I made the decision to make a move. And Kirkland was supportive and really great about it. And so I made the move and went out and hired a bunch of people, and we just started to get moving. And you asked the question, and what C Street does is, we are high level, we're a strategic communications and crisis management firm. In restructuring world, what we do is provide strategic advice for how companies should be communicating with all of their key stakeholders, from employees to vendors to suppliers to customers to investors, how to deal with the media, and how to collaborate and work together with all of the other professionals. So it's one cohesive group helping the companies get through their situation.
Yeah. And C Street, where's that from?
Where'd I come from? So, if you've ever started a company, which you have, you try to come up with a name, and C Street, there were three things that came out of it. First, my favorite band in the entire world is Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band.
Okay.
But I decided not to call it E Street.
Right.
Second, I was thinking that the C-suite is who we are dealing with all the time. And then third, my wife's favorite place to go when she was growing up was C Street Beach, which was SEA, but C Street Beach in Cape Cod. And so one day I was just like, oh, you know what? E Street, C-suite, C Street, let's do C Street. And that's
I was about to ask you, did you live down in Washington, D.C. at some point? And there was C Street. I think there's a C Street. I'm sure there's a C Street.
There is definitely a C Street. And if I didn't care about going to jail, I'd steal the sign so I could have it.
Well, that's good. So I'm glad I asked you that question. I don't think think that's a pretty creative way to do it. So what makes you different? I think, what does C Street do that there are other communication firms, strategic communication firms, other crisis community. I think a lot of firms that kind of start here, don't just put out press releases. They start on like these really hard things to communicate, and that like crisis communications, and then they expand out to writing press releases. I don't mean to I don't mean that
No, no.
to say that, but what makes C Street different perhaps from some of those other prices?
Yeah. So I think it's a few things. One, I have that legal experience and have lived through restructurings, right? Like literally the trenches, living through everything. And I have Whitney Fogelberg, who joined me, who's also a partner at Kirkland. So we have that legal experience, that being on the ground, rolling up our sleeves, being in front of the courts, negotiating the deals. Second, we combine that with people, who have real strategic communications experience. And so we brought that together as one cohesive group. And so now, our team has done, 70, 80 restructurings. So my team, that's what they know. That's what they live with. Second thing is we don't think of ourselves purely as communications advisors. We think of ourselves more as management consultants that specialize in communications. And so we dig into companies, we roll up our sleeves, we figure out every single thing that the company does. We understand the business, we understand their debt documents, we understand the players and the dynamics. And I think by understanding all of that, bringing our experience to the table, we just bring a different service because we can be more strategic. We think ahead. We know where things are going. We focus on where to position the company. We make sure there's a consistent message throughout. And it's just a different level of sophistication and advice.
Yeah. And how many people do you have on your team?
We're at 33, I believe, at today.
And one of your team members was recognized for an emerging leader award, Luke Wolf. And his background, I think he came out of the New York City government, right?
He did. Yeah. So Luke is, Luke's one of those really just good people. He graduated from Duke and went and did Teach for America. And then after that went into the New York City government where he helped on everything, including communications. And then he was one of the first employees at C Street. He was with me before we officially launched and has been here ever since and has just done an amazing job at helping the firm grow.
Yeah. So emerging leaders we used to call it the 40 under 40. And we realized you can't fill a room of 300 people with just 40 people. Right. So, and then typically, Jon, they would only invite their spouses. So then you'd have a dinner. If all of the 40 showed up, you'd have 80. So we turned it into a sort of emerging leaders so we could recognize, and we typically recognize between 75 and 80 people, and maybe half of them would show up. But usually the firms only maybe said maybe 2 or 3 people, the wife and you guys came out with a lot of the leaders of your firm, a whole table on all that. It sounds like you want to build up a culture where you're kind of supporting, I see it the other way around. Like, let's say, the leaders or the lifetime, they bring out their group, but not as many, supporting the young leaders. So I want to applaud you for that. Why is that important that your representation of your firm be there? And I want to talk about culture. I don't want to make it about, our, table economics.
Yeah.
It's right.
I'm with you. Yeah, no, I think there's a few things with culture, right? So one of the things at Kirkland that has always stuck with me, the chair of the firm, the previous chair of the firm was a guy named Jon Henes. And when he became the chair, he spoke about Kirkland as an institution as opposed to a group of just lawyers. And he said, you were all stronger together than we are alone. And so he really pushed for collaboration. And he said, you will be rewarded for collaboration more than anything else. And I watched the firm grow from that, but also the restructuring group. We all communicated and collaborated incredibly well, became very friendly. So when I started C Street, one of the things that I impressed upon everybody from day one was we have to be a team. We have to collaborate. We have to have each other's backs, right? 1+1 can equal 4. It's not 1+1 equals 2. Second thing is, and actually Cory Booker, senator from New Jersey, said this to me, and it's stuck with me ever since. And I'm continuing to refine it and work on it. But he said when he's hiring for his team, because if you talk to people out in the world, they'll say, Cory's team is just this amazing group of people. And he's like, there's 3 things I look for. And this is the order from least importance to most importance. He said, first is talent, right? You need to have talented people, but you could have the most talented person in the world. And if they don't fit into the culture and they don't have good character, then they're going to hurt your team. He said, so number 1 is talent. Then number 2 is culture. So you need that talented person you're hiring to fit in with the culture. So our culture here is one of collaboration and teamwork. So our talented people need to do that. And then third is character. And that's integrity. That is, standing by your word. That is all of those things that really, is what draws people to you. And so that's our third thing. And so I think what you saw was, here's Luke, and Luke is this emerging leader, and in our firm, not emerging, he's a leader. And the team works with him every day, right? And they collaborate, and he mentors them, and they do great work with him, and they teach him, and it's a mutually beneficial environment, and they become friends and family. And so, we had Luke's mom and dad there, and then our team, and everybody wanted to be there to celebrate him.
Yeah, well, no, I applaud you for that. I really do. I think it's important. We talked a lot about mentorship, during this podcast, but I think it's important that we not only give back, right, give them leadership positions, but support them in those moments where they're being recognized. And I just wish that more firms think like you. No, there are some. I won't say there are, but there could be more, right? There of emerging leaders, and sometimes some emerging leaders kind of struggle just to get two seats to have their firm support them. And this is the future, right? And it's not the long future. It's maybe 5-10 years out, right? And if you just support some of those people, and I love our Emerging Leaders Awards gala and the sessions that go with it, because many of these emerging leaders are, Luke's already running, big parts of your firm, but are department heads and leaders of their own firms 5-10 years later, right?
That's right.
It's important. And so I applaud you with that. I do want 2 other things before we wrap up. And I know I thank you for your time here. One is, certainly politics. I just want to get and I'm not asking you to, say why you're supporting or not supporting, but the sort of the temperature, I think we could all agree, seems to be very high on both ends. And as a communications special ed, someone who kind of works with people all the time, right? And you've worked with, in restructuring and bankruptcies, it could get really, really tense probably. Well, is it just, and I mean, I'm looking from outside in. Is it just a really, really dirty business? I mean, just where people, people are tearing.
So I'd say this. I'd say that, I think politics, and I'll come back to your specific question, but I think politics gets a bad rap. And I'll tell you why. I think that a lot of political leaders are in it because they care about people and they want to make a difference. And the truth is, political leaders do make a difference, right? Like when we really think about it and you stop and you think about everything that goes on in your daily life, right? That got there because some political leader decided, I'm putting up a traffic light at that intersection because that's going to save lives, right? I think overall, it's really important. And for people who give their lives to it, I think it's a really important, noble effort. Um, Obviously, when you get to an election, right, people want to win, and that's where it can really become ugly. And I think it's always been ugly, right? I mean, if you go back in history and you look at it, it is today's world. I think there's two things that are out there. One is social media and the way that it silos people into where they get their information, and where these algorithms, you like something on Instagram and then you start to see the exact same things that you liked over and over again. And it leads you down a path. Right. So, and that can get, so again, that silos you on information. And I think when you combine that with a lot of the misinformation and, I mean, everybody knows since I was College national financier where I stand on this election, but I do think that, former President Trump, and the way that he is, not, his relationship with the truth, which is not there, and the way that he scapegoats people and attacks people, I think that has made it almost okay for others to do. And I'm not going to say that the Democrats are innocent in it, because Democrats fight back and say things as well. But I think we're in a position now where it does really look ugly, and we've got to find a way to bring people back together and unite the country. And, when you think about our country, like, my family, were Eastern European Jews, and they came here because they were being persecuted in Eastern Europe, right? The pogroms, or my great-grandfather was going to get conscripted into the Russian army and sent to Siberia. So they ran, and they said, we have to go someplace else. And where did they come? They came to America, and they came to America because we have the rule of law, we have democracy, we have freedom of speech, we have freedom of religion. And while that doesn't stop anybody from hating, and it doesn't stop anybody from being anti something, what it does is it gives you the protections to live the life you want to live. And that, to me, is we need to bring back that caring about the rule of law, preserving and making sure we're protecting democracy, making sure that people can speak their minds so long as they're not, hurting others, assaulting others, and doing things. But we have to be able to be a little bit more thick-skinned and go back to kind of like, when I was a kid, it was sticks and stones will break your bones, right? Names will never hurt you. Now, I don't think that's the way the world works anymore. I think we got to come.
Right. Yeah. Unfortunately, it doesn't. And look, I think on both sides, and I guess Donald Trump, does it, I guess has honed the sort of PT Barnum, there's no such thing as negative publicity, right? So it's just amplified, and he, I guess, if you will, if this is a compliment, he perfects sort of that, the negative, the negative part of that. And people just eat it up. It's amplified, and it's just, I mean, personally, it's just too much, right? And people, I think, good people, whether it's other business people or people who just want to do good, stay away from that fray and don't put themselves into the political ring, because who the heck wants any of that, right?
Well, I say this a lot. Okay. So, my friend, so if you look at the, you look at things that are being said and people get scared about it. So let's take, for instance, Springfield, Ohio.
Yeah.
Okay. And, former President Trump came out with his things about the Haitians and eating cats and dogs and all of that. And
it just turned into a meme. So that's,
well, it turned into a meme, but you have these, but in reality, what did we have? We had, a group of Haitians who came from Haiti because of all the gang violence. They were given temporary status here in the country. They were asked to go to Springfield, Ohio. And what did they do? They sent their kids to school. They went to church. They paid taxes, and they worked hard, right? And they've revitalized that city. But then they were under attack. And by the way, I know people who would sit here and say the country is under attack from immigrants. And when I ask them, like, okay, well, let me ask you this question. We live in New York City. Have you seen this? And they'll say no. And what I always talk to them about is say, it's like this. Let's say for like 29 days in a month, right? here's what you do every night, right? You put your kids to bed and you read to them. You go get into bed and you read. And then on the 30th, and you fall asleep and everything's great. On the 30th night, instead of reading, you turn the TV on and you watch a horror movie. Okay. Now that night, you don't sleep so well because you just heard a creak and you think maybe it's like somebody coming to murder you, which the other 29 days you never even thought about. And it's this fear and misinformation that gets thrown out there into social media and the New York Post and other things that then leads people to start to fear things that aren't real. And I think that's so dangerous because there are so many real things that we need to deal with, but now people don't know what they are.
Yeah.
I don't know if how to bring all that back, but my hope is back to how you started it, is that the good people on both sides of the aisle who are in the political arena to make a difference and make people's lives better will find a way to come together. And, and even if they don't agree on all the issues, we'll work hard to compromise and help the country. So
Well, I'm going to challenge you because you're a communications professional, and I want the answer from you, which is all of this, whether, Donald Trump could say something, but then it's amplified over and over and over again, not by him, but he's figured out a way that he gets other people to amplify it for him. I mean, he, since 2015, 2016, the media just gives him billions of dollars of free publicity, right? And it just happened. And then, by the way, other people do it too, right? You say something and that's going to get amplified, or, it continually gets amplified. How do we, as I guess, as consumers of this information, how do we control that or stop that? I mean, control is not the right word because that's, it's free speech here, but as a communications professional, isn't the answer in how we temper that amplification? One of those things.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think it's education, and I don't just mean in schools. So just as an example, Elon Musk. Okay. I've never clicked follow him on Twitter, but guess what? Whatever he's done, I and everybody else that's on Twitter follows him. So he shows up on my feed, 1 out of every 20 times. And right now he is on the Donald Trump bandwagon. So it's just infiltrating, my Twitter feed or X feed or whatever it's called now. But so when I say education, here's what I mean. People need to realize, and this goes for everybody, that just because you read something or see it on social media, it doesn't make it true. And we should really dig in to see. And usually it doesn't take much more than Googling what it is to figure it out. So rather than just start spreading that yourself, right? Stop for a second, see if it's true. So I'm seeing this throughout the campaign on things where people, right, because of my role in the campaign, because of my relationship with the vice president, people will reach out to me about things and they'll say, did you see this?
Right.
And they'll send me something. I'll look at it and I'll be, okay, that doesn't seem right to me, but I don't know. And then I Google, right? And I do some research and I'm like, okay, maybe it is right. Usually it's not. Here's what the real story is. So I think it's educating people to say, we've got to, if we really are going to get our news from social media, right, we've got to be really careful and you got to do a little work. Otherwise, we're all living in alternative universes.
Yeah.
And we all think there's these truths that aren't true. And it's very hard to, work together and collaborate if you're coming at it with different information and you think, certain things are true when they're not.
Yeah, so the Google, now we're getting into Google, even if you Google something, it'll show you what you're Googling, right? So it'll just like, you only turn on to the channels or the media that you kind of follow through. I just, from a practical standpoint, I got 3 teenage daughters. I'm losing that battle. Just as a parent, you feel like you're losing that battle with the social media. And, my wife's resorted to we're taking their phones away, right? You just have to have to do that.
But if you have, they'll get on TikTok, and if they start going down a certain algorithm, it's going to start telling them this, this, and this. So back to like my, Springfield, Ohio Haitian thing. If you get on to the wrong thing and you click on, and then you start seeing, fake videos of somebody eating a dog or holding a goose or whatever, and like, oh my God, I can't believe this is really happening in our country. And you're like, well, but it's not, right? But you would know that, and we're seeing the dangers of that. I mean, this isn't obviously a business communication issue, but I try
This is communications, right? So I would say all of that's using social media, not necessarily for the good, right?
Sure.
But let's bring it back to business. This is an M&A advisor podcast, but from those tools can actually be used for the good, right? Spreading, the good news about a restructuring or bankruptcy or product information of things that can be of value to consumers and to businesses, and you could use all these tools, in that respect. Do you consult, advise your clients to be utilizing these tools on that level?
Yeah, it depends on the client and how they can, where they're,
because you better be doing digital marketing and social media nowadays, right? You can't. It's not a press release.
Yeah, I mean, look, take my business, right? I mean, C Street, we obviously post things on social media, and we use LinkedIn a lot and others, and Instagram, but that's not really how we get our business, right? Our business is still word of mouth, still the hustle and everything else. When we did crypto cases, right, the crypto investors, that's where, Reddit and Twitter is where they lived or where they communicated. So we needed to work with, our clients to put information out in digestible pieces on those platforms. So we were reaching the audience we needed to reach. So I think every company's different. There's no question that almost everybody's on social media today at one, level or another. But we always are advising, like, how do you not just deal with the regular media, but social media? Where can you go and start positioning yourself or your company? What information do you want out there? And sometimes, we get clients who say there's either misinformation or somebody's trying to actually hurt us. Can you help us find out who's doing it and why? And we have a part of our business that can dig into that, and we've had real success in that.
Yeah, I think you have to be aware, and you have to be really skilled at some of these new tools now. And you can't, put your head in the sand and know that you could just do press releases nowadays, right? It's gotta be. I'm old school, so our company's been around since there were fax machines. If you can, right? So
as well,
it's a friend of mine, a VC friend of mine, said it's easier or better to start up a new company now, right? Because you got all the tools, and now you don't have all that legacy stuff that you have to deal with. But a lot of your clients are legacy clients, if you will. They're 20 plus, 30 plus years old, these companies, or even older. Many of these companies. We've run over time here, Jon. Is there anything else that you want to add, or anything that we didn't cover?
No, I think we covered a lot. I mean, we even got to politics, so we covered a lot.
No, that's good. And I certainly, I think we have a number of people who, are, interested. I would think there are a lot of smart people that listen to our podcast that are in M&A and restructuring that, want to take a further step than just writing a check out to folks. And I'm sure, as the finance chair or former finance chair, you asked a lot of people for checks.
I've definitely done that. Look, to your point though, getting smart people into the political process, whether they're running or whether they're just involved, I think it's really important. And I think that, we need that, right? We need that to make sure that our country remains, in a good place. And we protect democracy and the rule of law. And, a lot of people sit it out because either like how you started off your question about, is it just kind of like this toxic environment? I know you didn't use those words. Or people sit it out because like, well, my voice doesn't really matter, or what am I really going to do? But I've seen it, you can have influence, big or small, if you really want to. And because they're always looking for smart people, the good politicians that are out there, they want to get lots of different perspectives. And so there's a lot you can do. And I really just think our country, was founded on, it's for the people. And, if you're part of the country, to me, it's important to do something. And
What do you recommend? You go to let's say someone wants to get involved. I mean, I guess Luke was involved, in there. Well, he had a job, but how do you get involved?
well, yeah, take Luke. I mean, Luke's a great example because, he was involved in city government, and like you said, that was his job. And his mom is very involved in one of the gun safety organizations, Sandy Hook, and he's now involved on the junior committee of that. So that's not politics, right? But it overlaps because, well, they're pushing for gun safety regulations in this country. And so that's how he does it. That's something that he cares deeply about. And so he's involved with it and his family's involved. So everybody can kind of find their own issue that they care about. And I think, my one piece of advice would be that generally, the political world doesn't change overnight, right? And it's not like a business where, if I wake up tomorrow and I say, you know what, this piece of the business isn't working, so we're going to stop doing it and we're just going to focus on something else. Government's not like that, right? Politics isn't like that. So it turns less quickly, and it requires.
We're looking at the DMV, so we it turns.
Well, that we can hopefully make some changes with. But it takes compromise to get to change because you have different parties and different people that want different things. And, I guess a lot of the time we've been seeing, especially recently, people digging in and just kind of going to their corners. And my hope is that we find a way to bring it back.
Yeah. Well, with that, I'll just have one last question. If Kamala Harris, if she wins and she says, Jon, I'd like you to be, do this. Is there something you would do, or, and then Luke can run the company, right?
Sure. No, I mean, look, at this point, I started C Street because I love it and I love what I do and I love my team. So anything that I would do at this point would be not, an official role. And there's a lot that people can do. So if Kamala wins, and she wants me to help in some way, somewhere, I will do that. But not something that's going to be that
capacity. If she's, I'm
going to continue to run C Street and grow it. One day maybe I'll get to a point where, I've built C Street up into a way where it continues to go and it'll be successful with me stepping aside to go get into government and really do something. But this isn't the time. Well, right now, my focus is on helping her win.
We'll see in a few weeks. We're recording this at late October, so we'll know in less than a couple of weeks. And then I'm inviting you down to the Palm Beach event, March of 2025, because it is a restructuring, distressed and turnaround awards there as well. So. I hope to see you there. I hope you take my invitation to be a
yes. Okay. I appreciate that invitation very much.
Okay, great. Jon, thank you very much.
You as well. Thank you so much. I really appreciate being on.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and learned something new from it. If you have any questions or comments for us or any of our guests, please feel free to leave them in the podcast platform of your choice, or send us an email at editor@maadvisor.com. We would love to hear from you and get your feedback. And if you haven't done so already, please follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and subscribe to our M&A Alerts newsletter at the links in the description or on our website at www.maadvisor.com. This will help you stay updated on the latest M&A interviews and trends and support our podcast to grow and reach more listeners like you. This is Roger Aguinaldo, the creator and founder of the M&A Advisor. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our M&A Advisor community. Until next time, stay safe and happy dealing.